I and you are very useful shorthand, even though at some level they're illusions. They're very useful shorthand for the system of my brain, really, and and my body, the whole system. That I is useful for that, but the illusion is when we feel like there's something outside of that system that can intervene, that is free, that's somehow free from the physical world. I can have the thought, yeah, I really am not crazy about having intellectual back and forth on Twitter, and then feel like I decide to not follow that thought, right? And the feeling, that's the feeling where the illusion comes in, because it really feels as if, sure, my brain had that original thought, and then I came in and made a different decision. But of course, the truth is, it was just further brain processing that got me to decide not to go down that path.
How much is that feeling of conscious will is culturally constructed shorthand? So like I and you is a you could say a culturally constructed shorthand. How much of that affects how we think? So our parents say I and you, and then we start to believe in I and you. And is that, or are we, is that fundamental to the human brain machine?
Yeah.
That we,
I think it goes very deep. I think it's fundamental, and I think it probably, some form of feeling like a self goes as deep as cats and dogs, and it's possible. I mean, if consciousness does go down to the level of cells, or however far down you want to take it, worms, or I think any system that's navigating itself, that kind of has boundaries and is navigating itself in the world. My guess is that it's an intrinsic part of. That's why I imagined that the P tendril would have this feeling, and so we use the word I. I think you're right, first of all, that the way we talk about things affects our intuitions about them and how we feel about them. And so there are other cultures who are more open to breaking through these illusions than others, for sure, just because of their belief sets, the way they talk. I mean, I'm sure I'm not a linguist, and I don't even speak a second language, so I can't speak to it. But if there were a language um, that framed who we are differently in everyday language, I mean, in our everyday communication, I would think that would have an effect.
yeah, language does affect things. I mean, just knowing Russian and the history of the Soviet Union in the 20th century, obviously it lived under communism for a long time. So your conception of individualism is different, and that reflects itself in the
Absolutely.
language.
Yeah.
You could probably have this similar kind of thing within the language in terms of how we talk about I and we and so on.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's like certain countries or maybe even villages with certain dialects that like let go of the individualism that's inherent.
Yeah, I mean, there must be a range, but I do think that it's pretty deep,
Yeah.
and I think there's also a difference between the autobiographical me and then this more fundamental me that we're talking about, or that I'm pointing to as the illusion. So, in my book, I talk about if someone wakes up with amnesia, if they have brain injury and suddenly have amnesia and can't remember anything about their lives, can't remember their name, don't recognize people they're related to, um, they would have lost their autobiographical self, but they would still feel like an I. They would still have that basic sense of, I'm a person. I mean, they'd be speaking that way. I don't remember my name. I don't know where I live. It goes very deep, this feeling that I am a single entity, that is somehow not completely reliant upon the cause and effect of the physical world.
Can I ask you a pothead question?
Yeah.
Would you would you rather lose all your memories or not be able to make new ones? If you had to, now I'm asking you as a human, in terms of happiness and preference.
Oh. I can't answer that.
You like both. You like both features of the organism that you embody?
Well, one is intellectual and one is psychological, really. I mean,
Which one?
I would have to choose the memories only because, I mean, the memories of the past,
Yeah.
only because I have children and a family, and it wouldn't just be affecting me, it would be affecting them. It would just be too horrible.
No, but you would make new ones, right?
If I lost my memory of the
Oh,
past
you
13
think
years of my
would you
daughter's life.
you think you would lose? This is a dark question.
Oh, wait, wasn't that the question? Maybe I
No,
misunderstood the
no, no, no. You
question.
understood it perfectly, but
Yeah.
you don't. Oh, sorry for the dark question, but the people you love in your life, if you lost all your memory of everything, do you think you would still love them? Like you show up, you don't know.
I don't
It's a
know.
roll of the
I
dice,
mean, it would not in the way that I do.
right? So,
No.
some deep aspect of love is the history you have together.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and this gets to an interesting point, actually, which I think a lot about, which is memory. And we won't go into this yet, but I'll just plant a flag here
I
that
love the song.
memory is, yeah, memory is obviously related to time, and time is something that I'm fascinated with. And for this project I'm working on now, I've mostly been speaking to physicists who are interested in consciousness. And it's partly because of this link between memory and time, and all of these new fascinating um, theories and thoughts around the different interpretations of quantum mechanics, and looking at, the thing that I've always been looking for is really the fundamental nature of reality, and why my questions about consciousness lead me to wonder if consciousness is a more fundamental aspect of the universe than we previously thought, and certainly I previously thought. Um, and so memory is tied to so many things. I mean, even basic functions in nature. Actually, so the P tendril,
Mhm.
as I mentioned, memory comes into play there, and that's so fascinating. And there is no sense of self without memory, even if you're starting from scratch, as you said, with amnesia. Um, if you truly couldn't lay down any new memories, I think then that sense of self would begin to disintegrate, because the sense of self is one of a concrete entity through time. And if you really were stuck in the present moment eternally, you'd basically be meditating. And in meditation, this is a very common experience, is losing that sense of self, that sense of free will, that those illusions um, more easily drop away in meditation. And I would say for most people who meditate long enough, they do drop away. And there's actually an explanation at the level of the brain as well. The default mode network is circuitry in the brain that neuroscientists don't completely understand, but know is largely responsible for this feeling of being a self. And when that circuit gets quieted down, which it does in meditation and also does with the use of psychedelic drugs, and there are other ways to quiet down the default mode network, people have this experience of losing this illusion of being a self. They no longer feel that they're a self in the way that they usually do.
So there's the autobiographical self is connected to the sense of self
Oh,
through
absolutely.
the
Yeah,
memory, and
sure.
then you're thinking that
But
the
even just
solution to that lies in physics, not just neuroscience. Like
mhm.
ultimately, consciousness and the experience, the conscious will, is a question of physics.
I may have said something misleading because I was connecting too many dots.
I Half the things I say are misleading. Let
um,
us mislead each other.
I got excited when memory came up because I love talking about time,